Hello and welcome back to my top 100 Spectrum games. This time we're going to be taking a look at games 60 to 51. My number 60 game is Commando. Now this is another excellent arcade conversion on the Spectrum. Commando was released by Elite Systems in 1985. And of course, Elite Systems were famous for doing arcade conversions on the Spectrum. They did quite a lot of them. I think this is one of the best. It's absolutely excellent. It's very, very true to the arcade original, and I think I read in Retro Gamer at some point in the past that when Elite got the license to do the arcade conversion, all they were given was an arcade machine and told to play it. So that machine must have been played lots and lots and lots and lots of notes made on where all the soldiers come from, what each level looks like, so they could get such an accurate arcade conversion. Now for anyone who hasn't played this game, the way the game works is it's basically a vertical scrolling run and gun shooter. Your Commando is pretty elite. He goes pretty quickly, he shoots really, really quickly, and he also has grenades. And you're up against various baddies, and these baddies have what I like to call Stormtrooper syndrome. That is, they're absolutely rubbish at shooting you. They make up for that in that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And in fact, it can be quite intense, in particular at the end of each level. When you get to the end of each level, you get to some gates. The gates open and enemies swarm out of it. And you can't finish the level until you've killed all the enemies, although I think occasionally some run off the end of the screen. Most of the enemies are black, but one of the ones that comes out of the end of level gate in level 1 in particular is green, and if you shoot him you get more points. On later levels you get red enemies that launch rockets at you, and they're a real pain. I have a confession to make. I went on the school trip to France one year while I was at school, and on the way back we stopped in a service station. It was when we came back into the UK and we were driving back to where I lived. And in that service station there was a load of arcade machines, and there was a Commando arcade machine, and the coin door wasn't closed. It was unlocked. And someone discovered this, so of course we opened it, and with the coin door open you can put a 10p in, and instead of dropping into the coin box, it drops onto the floor. Or into your waiting hand if you put your hand underneath. I think we were in that service station for about an hour, and a lot of the boys that I was with, myself included, played a lot of games of Commando. And I think that's how I knew that the Spectrum version of Commando when it came out was such a faithful arcade conversion. We went a long way into that game. It was funny, I remember all the lads crowded round, making sure no one could see us, feeding the same 10 pence into the game again and again and again and getting lots of credits. But there you go, I know that we all put a lot of 10p's into arcade machines. Now I think the reason why this game is so good is just because it's got quite a nice difficulty curve. It does get harder and does get really, really intense, but it never feels particularly unfair. It feels hard, but not unfair. There's a class of games where it feels that if you die, it's your fault, and I think this is one of those games you tend never to feel it's not your fault. Sometimes I feel I'm struggling with the controls, particularly if I use the keyboard. It still doesn't feel particularly unfair. It's a really, really good game, and I like a game that can get that balance right between feeling hard but not unfair. Looking on the World of Spectrum website, apparently this game was also known as Space Invasion. Now I don't know where that came from, I've never heard it called Space Invasion before. So that's my number 60 game, Commando. My number 59 game is Rambo. Now I think it's quite ironic that Rambo has ended up 59 where Commando was 60, because in the past I've seen lots and lots of debates on which is better, Rambo or Commando. There was one recently on the World of Spectrum website forum. Some people think Rambo's better, some people think Commando's better, and you'll be able to tell by the fact that Rambo is in my 59 spot and Commando was 60 that I think Rambo just pips it, but only just. And actually, I think they're almost too close to separate from a which is the better game, but I also think they're very, very different games. Commando's basically it's a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, whereas Rambo you get scrolling in all directions. And you have a bit more kind of almost RPG mechanic to the game in that you've got to go around and find various weapons before you make your final assault on the game and complete the game. There's a bit more to do in Rambo, and I think that's why, for me, it pips it. It pips Commando because actually there's just that little bit more to do. Rambo was released in 1985 by Ocean Software. This is one of those games that my neighbour had. I think my neighbour probably got it for Christmas 1985. Rambo, the film, had been a huge hit. The strange thing is, these days, companies seem to try and get their games to coincide with the release of a film, to capitalise on the marketing for the film. Back in 1985, there was obviously a lot of pressure to get releases of games out. If you read the making-ofs in Retro Gamer, that comes across quite a lot for a lot of games, and I'm sure it was true for this one. But I think it's probably more to hit the Christmas release period than anything else. And some of these arcade licenses came out a lot later than the original game and would capitalise upon the popularity of the game, particularly if it was on video. Now, I'm sure Rambo was a box office success, but I know it was a huge video success. It will have been rented from video shops a lot, and that kind of kept things going a bit. Now, I really liked Rambo First Blood Part 2, the film. It was a really good film. I really like the original Rambo film. I think the original Rambo film is the best in the series. It's a much better story. There's this guy, he comes to this village, they don't treat him very well, and unfortunately, they picked on the wrong person, and all hell breaks loose. If you haven't seen the original First Blood, it is well worth searching out. I've done a walkthrough of this game, actually. It's one of those ones where I mastered and ended up completing. And it's a really good game. And what happens to start off with, you can be stealthy. It starts off as a bit of a stealth game in that if you avoid the enemy and if you do have to kill them, use a quiet weapon, like the knife or the bow, then you don't get too many other enemies. However, once you get into the enemy compound and release the first captive, all hell breaks loose and loads and loads and loads of the enemies start pursuing you. Now, once you've done that, you've just got to hightail it out of there and try and find the helicopter. One of the things I really liked about this game was the different weapons that you could find. And whether or not you have a good game in this, I think, depends on whether you find the weapons quickly or not. The only weapon I thought you really needed to find was the rocket launcher. The reason for that is, once you get in the helicopter, if you haven't found the rocket launcher, you can't fire out of the helicopter. Now, one of the things that I did do occasionally was just hightail it up to the helicopter immediately, and then use the helicopter to search for the rocket launcher, and you can land the helicopter at various helipads. And if you're lucky, sometimes the rocket launcher is very near the helipad in the original area, so you can get it quite easily. And I think that's what happened when I did my walkthrough of the game. The different aspects to the game, the way that you start stealthy, and then you've got a real difficult task to get to the helicopter, then you're flying in the helicopter. And actually, you kind of get an amazing feeling of power. It's one of those things where sometimes in a game you reach a certain point and you get really good, and you think, right, I've got it now. That's a bit of that RPG element. If ever you play an RPG, a kind of classic RPG, and you grind a bit, so you grind a few levels up, then all of a sudden you feel almost invincible. You've done the grind, you've got a few levels under your belt, and for at least the time being, you're very powerful and nothing's going to touch you. And that's what it feels like when you get to the helicopter in Rambo. You can be shot down. There are some of the soldiers around enemies which have rocket launchers. Occasionally they will hit you, but it's not very often. So like I say, this is a really good game for me, and in the debate of which is better, Commando or Rambo, they're both very close, but Rambo just picks it for me. So that's my number 59 game, Rambo. My number 58 game is Psst. Psst was released in 1983 by Ultimate Play the Game and was their follow-up to Jetpack. So it was the second game they ever released. And let's face it, it's not quite as good as Jetpack. It's a good game and it's an interesting game, but it just isn't as good as Jetpack. After this, they were going to release Trans Am and Cookie, and again, they didn't really recapture the greatness of Jetpack. Now, funnily enough, in today's world, you would never get a game like Psst. It's about a robot using spray cans of chemicals to kill various bugs in his garden. In this kind of green-aware universe that we now live in, I don't think you'd probably get them doing that. But you got to remember, this game comes from a time where we made games about centipedes and ladybugs and all kinds of other things like that. In Millipede in particular, there are cans of DDT that if you hit at the right point in time will completely kill the millipede. Now there are 3 enemies in this game. There's kind of wiggly worms, strange fuzzy things that run around, and what look like bees or wasps. And in the middle of the screen there's a flower that's growing up. And if the bugs eat the flower, it gets smaller and smaller and dies. If the bugs aren't eating the flower, then it grows bigger. If one bug's eating the flower, it stays the same. And there are 3 spray cans. For each bug, the spray cans do different things. One spray can will kill the bug, one spray can will freeze them, and the other won't affect it at all. And that's rotated around the 3 different types of bugs. Now that gives a useful mechanic, because actually being able to freeze them is quite good. So the can that kills the worms will freeze the fuzzy things, the can that kills the fuzzy things will freeze the wasps, and the can that kills the wasps will freeze the worms. And that gives you a way that you can win in this game, in that you only need 1 can, because sometimes you have 2 bugs on the screen at the same time, and 1 can will kill one and freeze the other. And of course, while a bug's frozen, it isn't eating your plant. The other thing that appears in this game are bonuses. Watering cans and bags of fertiliser and things like that. There's not really a lot more to say about this game. I don't think I have a lot to say about it. It's good. It has that ultimate slickness, the polish, that all their games had. It's really well presented. The graphics are good. There isn't very much flicker. They're well animated. Graphics are drawn really, really well in that cartoony way that Ultimate had of drawing their graphics. It might be in this list on nostalgia for me. This was the next game I bought after receiving Attic Attack and Spectral Panic for Christmas in 1983. I saved up my pocket money for months, I think, to be able to buy this game. It was either $5 or $6.99. And this was back in the days when I think a pint of beer would have been about 50p. So thinking about it, this game was worth 12 pints of beer. Now these days, 12 pints of beer is probably around 60 quid. Other notable thing about this game is it was one of the ROM cartridges that you could get for the Spectrum that worked with the interface too. There were 4 Ultimate games. The first 4 Ultimate games, the 16K games, this, Jetpack, Trans Am and Cookie were all released on those ROM cartridges. And if you ever see them now on eBay, you'll see that they go for quite a lot of money. This was a fun little game and really, really good to play. It had that ultimate gameplay that was really, really good and would entertain you for quite a while. So that's my number 58 game, Psst. My number 57 game is Smuggler. Now, anyone who is one of my regular viewers, either on this channel or on the Spectrum Show, will know that I really like these strategy type games. And this is a strategy game. Actually, it's interesting. On the World of Spectrum website, these games are called strategy management. And you can think of Smuggler as a kind of very, very early version of the Trading in Elite. What you have to do is buy and sell goods at various ports and make money. At the beginning of the game, you pick a difficulty level. And the harder the difficulty level, basically, the more money you've borrowed and the better ship you have. There are various commodities that you can buy at each port, and each of these commodities in a certain port is in a fixed range, and at the other ports they fluctuate. So, for example, in England, tools will always be in the same range, between £5 and £25, whereas in France, perfume will always be between £10 and £75 for a crate. Your boat can take a certain amount of cargo, and you need to know how much cargo your boat can take and buy it at one of the ports. Then you have to move it. You've got to move it into the hold. Set sail for another port, and when you arrive at the other port, you have 2 choices. You can either pick, you will only be able to move your goods to your smuggler's cave. You'll have to then set sail again, come back and move them from the cave into your warehouse so you can sell them. I never ever smuggle. I don't see the point in this game. Yeah, you might want to be a smuggler and you can make a bit of money by not paying the duty. But to be honest with you, if you're good at trading, you don't really need to do that. Because if you're good at trading, you'll actually get a really good idea of how much all the commodities are worth, what's a good price, what's a bad price, and the excise duty doesn't make that much difference. If you're going to make a profit, you're going to make a profit. Now, one of the strange things that happens with these games is sometimes the commodities at their non-home port will fluctuate quite wildly. And once you've got a bit of money behind you, what you can do is buy a lot of a commodity, a lot more than your ship is able to take, ship some of your commodities to a new port to make a profit, but leave the rest in the port you're currently at, sail back there, and then sell them again when the price has gone up. So sometimes, to make money, you don't even have to ship the goods around. You've just got to buy them and wait a while until the price gets better, and then sell them. Now, you do have to manage your bank account and things like that in this game, and you can repay your loan. The good thing is you can over-repay your loan. So you can actually get money in the bank, which you get interest on. And you get the interest at the same rate as you get on your loan, which is pretty generous. It's 1% per day. Now, 1% per day is pretty much Wonga rates of interest. Getting that on your current account is pretty good. So another really easy way to make money in this game is repay all your loan, pay a bit more into the bank, and you can keep going. And one of the worst things you can do in this game when you're doing really, really well is go back to your home port of England with too much money in your pockets, because if you do that, you'll have won the game and it'll finish and you'll have to start again. And there's nothing better than really building up your money, getting to the best boat, and then you can go on a really long trip, all the way down to Turkey and buy some spices, or Egypt and buy relics. I would avoid going to Barbary and buying gold though. Because if you go to Barbary and if you buy gold, you will see on the map that there are pirates around in the Mediterranean. The pirates will almost certainly board you if you go all the way down to there and buy gold. So I really like this type of game. I really like this kind of strategy management, type your numbers in and see what happens. And as a demonstration of how good this game is, when I came to record the gameplay for this game, I sat down and started playing it and played the game for over an hour. And didn't realise, I didn't have a clue how long I played it for. I played it for over an hour and then stopped playing the game and looked at the length of the video that I'd recorded for gameplay and went, oh my god, I've been playing that game for an hour. I'll have to remember to say that in my top 100 when I get to this game so that people realise how good a game it is. It is easy to get lost in this game. Now, I've said a few times, particularly on the Spectrum show, that if you're a shoot-'em-up fan and just like shoot-'em-ups, this game won't be for you, and that's true of this game. If you're not, or even if you are, then maybe you'd like to try it. It is really addictive and a really, really good game. So that's my number 57 game, Smuggler. My number 67 game is Antiquity Jones. Before I talk about this game, I think I've just got to say something about Paul Jenkinson, its author. Now, I'm pretty sure that anyone watching this will have also watched the Spectrum show. Now, the Spectrum show is absolutely fantastic. Of all the shows that I watch on YouTube, the Spectrum show is the one I go to first. Every time there's a new Spectrum show, I'll watch that, and I think I've been watching it from the very, very first one. And in fact, at the end of the Spectrum show, Paul put something up saying, if you want to get in contact and help me out with the show, please give me a shout. And after seeing the first one, I did that immediately. It was like, Paul, this is brilliant, this is wonderful, how can I help you? And then, not long after that, I met Paul at Play Expo. And he's one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. He must be the only person I know who felt bad about getting a cut price jetpack rum cartridge. I'd just be over the moon with it. But going back to the Spectrum show is absolutely brilliant. The production values on the Spectrum show are absolutely huge. That's probably why the subscribers to the Spectrum show are in their thousands, whereas mine are just a few hundred. P.S. Subscribe if you haven't already. And the work that goes into the Spectrum, I know because I know Paul and I talk to him and we talk outside the show. And I know that the work that goes into the Spectrum show is huge. He puts a huge amount of work into that. Just the feature at the end of the last series where he did the history of the magazines, I know that he put a lot of time into researching that. that time pays dividends because you just see in the quality of the show, it's absolutely brilliant. It's much better than this. Much better than what I do, I'll freely admit that. But on with the game, Paul released Antiquity Jones in 2012. And let's face it, even the name of the game and the main character, you can tell that this is an Indiana Jones-inspired platform game. And I didn't play this game until after I'd met Paul. And I met Paul and I played his game. And I've played games made by people, kind of fan games and games that people have done, the kind of homebrew scene. Some of them are really good, some of them aren't so good. This falls into the really good category. The first thing that struck me about the game is how good it looks. It looks absolutely gorgeous. There's kind of lush green trees, the graphics look really good. I really like the way that the main character moves as well. The way he kind of flings his legs forward when he jumps is absolutely excellent. The next thing that struck me about this game is, well, this is a bit tricky. This isn't easy. One of the hardest things to get right with a game is the difficulty curve. Some games do it perfectly. The best game ever made is Super Metroid. And if you've ever played Super Metroid, then you'll know that the difficulty curve is perfect. It never feels like it gets too hard. It just gradually ramps up in a way that almost makes it invisible. You almost don't realise the game's getting harder. I can see why people love doing speedruns and things like that, because once you've done it, if you go back to the start of that game and try it again, then it becomes easy. And actually, it's only the second and third times you play through Super Metroid that you realise that actually there is a difficulty curve, that it got harder. Now, I think if I was going to criticise this game at all, it's that this starts a bit hard. In fact, the first few screens are the hardest in the game. Until you get to about halfway. And what I love about the game is when you get halfway, there's a nice little signpost saying, you're halfway. And it actually gets easier once you get halfway. And once you reach the end and collect the, let's face it, it's the Holy Grail. Again, very Indiana Jones inspired. And start to make your way back. The game's much, much easier. But that's not to say it's a bad game. I've played some of his other games. I think this is the best of his games. I really, really like it. And like I say, I really like the way the main sprite moves. I have done a walkthrough of it. As a walkthrough, I've got the commentary on it. So if you want to know how to do it and how to play it, just go and see that. The one thing I would say about the lush visuals is, if you watch the Spectrum show, there was an episode of the Spectrum show where Paul talked about making this game. And I think it was there that he said, originally, the wasps he did quite big. And I quite like the big wasps, Paul. I kind of wish you'd left them in. I don't think I've ever said that to you. That's a tiny minor thing, and the difficulty curve's a minor thing. In fact, that's almost to say, look, if you haven't played this, give it a try. It is an absolutely excellent game. If you find it hard at first, just persevere with it, because it will get easier. So that's my number 56 game, Antiquity Jones. My number 55 game is Way of the Exploding Fist. Way of the Exploding Fist was released in 1985 by Melbourne House. And to my mind was the first really, really good fighting game that ever came out. I know there have been fighting games before it. I think there was one called Kung Fu on the Spectrum, might also have been on some other formats as well. But it had about 2 or 3 moves. There were a few fighting games that came out, and you had 1 or 2 moves, and you didn't have very good opponents. And Kung Fu itself, you didn't move very quickly. But this game came out, and it was absolutely excellent. The number of moves was incredible. All the different things you could do, all the different moves you could do made it a really, really good game. And this is probably slightly controversial, but for me, Where the Exploding Fist has never been bettered. Now, yeah, I've played Street Fighter, and I've played Mortal Kombat, and I've played a load of other fighting games since. And they have lots of moves, and yeah, you can do all the special moves, but to be honest with you, with Where the Exploding Fist, I mastered all the moves, knew how to do all the moves, and I could have a really good fight against a really good opponent. If you had a human opponent, when you really mastered it, you could only really get a good game out of a human opponent. I would have a game against a human opponent, and actually the one who was best, the one who had got more skill at the game and mastered it, they'd win. Or they'd win 9 times out of 10. Now, when I play Street Fighter or when I play Mortal Kombat, I'm just one of these guys who just bashes the buttons and tries and basically rotates the joystick in a circle clockwise and then anti-clockwise and hits every single button basically all at the same time. So basically, one hand I'm just smacking every single button, and the other hand I'm rotating the joystick around one way, then round the other, alternating it every now and then to avoid getting repetitive strain injury. So I think that's why for me this was the definitive game. I've never really looked for a different karate game or fighting game ever since. Now I know I reviewed Barbarian earlier in this top 100 and said yes it was great and fighting with swords is better than fighting without swords. And clearly with Way of the Exploding Fist you're fighting without swords, it's just this is a better game. And to be honest with you, I don't think I've got any more to say about it than that. My number 55 game, Way of the Exploding Fist. My number 54 game is Booty. Booty was released in 1984 by Firebird Software. And if you look on the World of Spectrum website, something rather strange is there. There was a remake of Booty made by none other than Paul Jenkinson. Yeah, that's the same Paul Jenkinson who also made Antiquity Jones. Now as I said when I reviewed Antiquity Jones, I know Paul, so I thought rather than me talking about this game, I'd actually do an interview with Paul for his remake of Booty. So sit back and enjoy a short interview with Paul Jenkinson about his remake of Booty. Hi Paul, and thanks for agreeing to do the interview.
Hi mate, no problems. I must owe you something for all the work you do anyway on the show.
So why did you decide to do a modern PC remake of Booty?
I wanted to do a platform game, I knew that, but I wasn't sure I could write a jump routine and all the collisions and position checking code that goes with it. What I wanted was that rarity which is a platform game that doesn't involve jumping, and Booty was the first game that came to mind. It does have other tricky things like moving platforms, but at least I could duck out of the jumping routines.
Having played the game, it's very close to the original. How did you get it so close?
First I had a choice. Make an identical game, obviously with improved graphics and sound, or start to add things and sort of reboot it. I was tempted to make multiple ships and add extra stuff, but decided to get the game as near as possible first. That way it wasn't really about coming up with ideas for screen layouts, it was just a matter of writing a game engine that could do all the things required, and then using it to build the individual screens.
Did you use a disassembly of the game or anything like that?
I started out by mapping the game very carefully. I played it through a lot of times using pokes so that I didn't die. I checked each screen for treasures and positions of keys and doors and other things, like randomly appearing rats and parrots, and then started to build it. I had a really long comprehensive lookup chart on a spreadsheet for each room that outlined where the doors were and where the keys were, etc. And then I just sat down and started coding it.
And lastly, is there any advice you'd give people who want to make their own modern remakes of old Spectrum games?
Yeah, first make the choice I mentioned earlier and stick to it. Use whatever tools you're familiar with and make sure they can do what you want them to do before starting. I say that because I had to change part way through writing the game because my first choice just wasn't up to the job. And obviously I lost a lot of time then. Also, don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of people out there who can draw great graphics and create nice music and even help with coding. There are also people out there that will probably know the game inside out and a lot better than you do, and it will certainly save a lot of time if you do it that way. But my main advice is, if you're going to do it for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else, don't do it to prove a point, don't do it to win something, just do it for your own pleasure. Otherwise it just becomes a chore and then something that you resent and it probably never gets finished. So yeah, just do it for yourself.
Thanks Paul, that's really good advice, and thanks again for agreeing to do this interview. So that's my number 54 game, Booty. My number 53 in a little big game is Pogo. So I should probably explain what's going on here. When I originally came to do this top 10, I thought of every single game that I'd ever played on the Spectrum and wrote them down. Then I went through each one of those and ranked them and eventually came up with my top 100 Spectrum games. What's happened is I've discovered that there was one game I forgot, and that was this, Boggle. And when I did, I thought, well, maybe I could put it as an honourable mention at the end or something like that. I am planning to do honourable mentions at the end of the top 100. But then I thought, well, no, this game is so good that I can't really do that. It's not an honourable mention, it should be in the top 100. So I decided, is there anything I can leave out? Is there anything I can swap it out for? And I couldn't. So what I decided to do was think, where would I have put it in the list? And actually it would have come in around 53. So what I've done is decided to crowbar it in at number 53 in a little bit. Boggle was released in 1983 by Ocean Software and is a Cubert clone. And is a really, really good Cubert clone for the Spectrum. One of the things that I really like about this game, and it must have taken some really kind of clever programming, is the lack of colour clash. There isn't a lot of colour clash in this game. There's some. I think it would be impossible to actually do the game with colour without any colour clash at all. But this is a game where colour is one of the fundamental attributes of the game. If you've never played Cubert, what you need to do is jump around a pyramid, turning each square a different colour. So as your Cubert character lands on one of the squares, I'm calling them squares, they're hexagons really. As he lands on one of the squares, it will change colour, and in the first few screens, you only have to land on each one once to change it to the correct colour. In subsequent levels, it gets a bit more tricky. What they do is they colour the square twice, so it may have to go from red to blue in the early levels, then in the later levels, it's got to go from red to yellow to blue. Now that doesn't sound too hard, except there are baddies that are after you, as with all games. And in the first few screens, you get these kind of bubble things that drop down from the top, and they'll either bounce left or right, always going down. That makes them kind of easy to avoid. You know, for example, if one's bounced to the left, then it can never go to the far right of the screen, so it gives you an area of the screen where you're safe. Then, in later levels, you get crabs, and they come on from the bottom of the screen and will either move across, up, or down. And they're a bit harder. They can be a bit harder to evolve, and it actually can be difficult to get some of the bottom hexagons or squares on the screen when they're on the screen. There is a final baddie, which is a snake that kind of bounces around the screen. So he always tries to get to wherever you are. Now, each of the pyramids has a number of kind of flying discs that our hero can jump onto. And when he jumps onto them, you get a lovely sound effect. The sound in this game is really good, actually. All the sound in this game is really good, but the sound effect when you jump onto the flying disc is really good. And if the snake is near enough to you when you jump on the disc, he tries to follow you and jumps off the edge of the pyramid to his doom. You would then return to the top of the pyramid and can continue trying to complete that level. Now this is a really good game. Now Cubert's a really good game in the arcade, but this is a really, really good version of Cubert for the Spectrum. I can't think of how this game could have been better. Like I say, there's very little colour clash. There's a bit, the crabs are red and you get a bit of clash with them. I think the crabs in the original Cubert game were actually these strange characters that jumped in a kind of Etchus type, gravity-defying, landed on the side of the hexagons instead of the upright pieces. Probably worth you going and checking out the original Cubert to see what I mean. But in this game, they're just crabs and they just move around. Now, you do get a bit of colour clash with them, but the rest of the game, actually, you don't get a lot of colour clash. Cubert himself, he's the magenta colour, and he seems able to bounce around the pyramid without hardly ever changing colour at all. It's quite impressive, actually. And I don't think there's a lot more to say about this game. Cubert's a very, very simple game. This is a really well-executed version of it. It's well worth picking up. Interestingly enough, it isn't distribution denied on World of Spectrum website, so you can download it from there. I would advise everyone to download it and give it a go. If you like Cubert, then it's definitely worth having a go. If you don't like Cubert, then I'd say give it a go anyway. So that's my number 53 and a little bit game, Boggle. My number 53 game, is Frankenstein. Frankenstein was released by PSS Software in 1984 and was written by Colin Stewart. And if you go to the World of Spectrum website, of course, it says it was inspired by Mary Shelley's book Frankenstein. Now, before I go any further, I'll just mention the reboot of this. There's a remake called Frankenstein Rebooted, which was released in 2011, so not that long ago, actually, and also written by Colin Stewart. And the reason he did this was the original Frankenstein had some bugs which stopped it from being completed. And let's face it, there's more than one Spectrum game that had a bug that stopped it from being completed, probably the most famous being Jet Set Willy. And what Colin did is, I think it was on the anniversary as well of the game. Yeah, it was 27 years, exactly 27 years after the original. He released it, so the 14th of September 2011. And he'd actually fixed the bug, so you're able to complete the game now. I've never completed it. I've never come near. I might at some point in the future check out Frankenstein Rebooted and see if I can complete it. So the gameplay mechanic in Frankenstein is quite good. It's quite original. Basically, you're Frankenstein and the professor, and you're trying to assemble your monster, and you do this by collecting the various body parts and then pushing the plunger to put power into the monster and bring him to life. And then once he does, he goes on a rampage, so you've got to get to the top of the screen and deactivate him. You then go onto another screen where you've got to make another monster. You have a try again, and they just get trickier as they go on and on and on. The not being able to jump sounds a bit restrictive, but there's quite a good mechanic to replace that. You have springs that when you walk over, they will push you up, bounce you up to the next level. And they can bounce you up higher than the next level. Sometimes your head will pop out to the level above, so you've got to be quite careful when you jump. There are various baddies on each screen that move around in the old way that if you touch them, they kill you. There are a few other things. There are kind of what looks like rubber bands that can take you down platforms as well. So the springs will bounce you up a platform, and there's like rubber bands or lifts that let you go down platforms. The other thing that there is that's kind of an obstacle, but not an obstacle on the assembly screens anywhere, are strange kind of exclamation marks that give you an electric shock. But when they do, they actually increase your time, so they can be used quite tactically to increase the amount of time you have to assemble your... All the bits of the monster have to be assembled in the right order. So you've got head, left body, left torso, right torso, left leg, right leg. And then you can go to the top of the screen, push the plunger, and create your monster. Now this is a fun little game, and this is what my neighbour had. My neighbour got this for Christmas one year. I would guess Christmas 1984. And we played this a lot. It was quite a good game. We never got that far into it, which is a pity really. It took a lot of perseverance. It's a difficult game. We're on a nice difficulty curve. As with all of these games, certainly from now on in the list, it's well worth checking out. If you like platform games and are looking for something just that little bit different, I'd certainly recommend it. So that's my number 53 game, Frankenstein. My number 52 game is Barry McGuigan's World Championship Boxing. I think I'm just going to call this one Barry McGuigan's Boxing, by the way. It was released in 1985 by GameStar. GameStar were also the company that released Boulder Dash. And it was a multi-format release. It was released for the Amstrad and the Commodore 64 as well. And this was one of two boxing games that I played on the Spectrum. This was the second one, and I actually got this as a budget release. I either got it as a budget release or it may have been a cover tape. If it was on a cover tape, I'll probably have got it as a cover tape. So I came to this quite late in the Spectrum's life. Certainly in my Spectrum playing life, which was towards the end of the 80s. I kind of played my Spectrum from 83 up until probably 87. And I think I'll have bought it on a commercial release. Near the end, I used to buy an occasional game, kind of load it up and play it a little bit towards the end of the Spectrum's life. And this is one of the ones that I did that with. Strangely enough, I didn't really get into this game until emulation came along. It was when I could emulate this game that I really started to play it a bit more. And as with a few of the games in this list, and I haven't said this much up until now, but this game is better if you play it emulated with the speed cranked up a little bit. I find the boxing matches themselves can sometimes be a bit slow if you don't play them with the emulation speed cranked up. Now that does make the game harder, of course, because your opponent's quicker as well. But I think this is all the better for that. So in the game's quite good. It's a bit of a management sports game. Think of sensible World of Soccer, where as well as managing a team, you're also playing the games themselves. In this, you kind of manage your boxers. So what you've got to do is create a boxer, and you can give them a different look and a different style, which influences your stats in the game. You can then choose who you're going to fight next and choose how you're going to train. And a little tip for this game, if you keep choosing the bottom boxer, you get an easy match, and that can really help you. That helps you train up. And then basically, you've got a ladder to climb, the world rankings ladder. You challenge boxers, and if you beat them, you move up. If you get defeated, you go down. And sometimes you've got to go down and almost back to the start if you get defeated. Because what happens is, before each match, you've got a number of weeks to train, and you can train different things. So road work increases your stamina, bag work increases your speed, sparring increases quite a lot of different characteristics. You've got weight, which increase your strength, and then they all determine how the boxing match pans out. Your strength and stamina will go down throughout the match, as will your speed. But if you're really, really quick, you can get a lot of punches in, but that's very strength sapping and stamina sapping. Whereas if you're slow but have a high strength, you can do some really, really hard punches. But of course, sap your opponent's endurance. And then you get to see your stats at the end of each round, and the judges score the match and tell you who's won. You can do a number of different punches. You can do a jab, a cross, an uppercut, or a body blow. And you get quite a satisfying crunch noise when you land one of these punches. It's using the Spectrum's beeper, so it's not particularly sophisticated, but it sounds really good. Now, I'm saying this a lot at the moment, but yeah, I'd recommend this game. Go out. If you've never played it, download it. It's distribution denied at the World of Spectrum website. So, okay, if you've never played it and you really, really want to, I've really sold you on it, go to eBay, find a cassette, download it, and load it up in your Spectrum. So that's my number 52 game, Barry McGuigan's World Championship Boxing. My number 51 game is Exelon. Exelon was released in 1987 by Houston Consultants. According to the World of Spectrum website, it was written by Raphael Ciccello, Nick Jones and Nigel Brownjohn. Now, I always thought that it was just a Raphael Ciccello game, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his surname right there, but I'm pretty sure that's the way you pronounce it. And this is a run and gun game of the highest quality. It is a really excellent game, this. You play a kind of space marine, and you have two types of weapons, rockets that fire out of your backpack and a gun that shoots bullets. You have to proceed from left to right, getting past each screen and overcoming the obstacles. And the screens get progressively more difficult. And when you get to the end of the first level, there's a little bonus section where a pointer goes down. You can either get a nice big bonus or 0 points. I always get 0 points if I get to that section of the game. The graphics are excellent, really big and chunky. The explosions are really, really good. I love the explosions in this game. They look fantastic. Given that this game was written on a 48K Spectrum, the sound is brilliant. It's just a highly polished game. And to really appreciate this game, this is one of those games that you've got to play to appreciate. If I was going to criticise this game at all, I would say that there is a bit of a steep difficulty curve. The screens do get progressively harder, but that happens really, really quickly. And to start with, I think you're given 8 lives, and you think that's loads, but those 8 lives go down very, very quickly. And some of the screens just feel a bit unfair. You sometimes die and think to yourself, yeah, really, I don't think I should have died there. Anyone who's ever played Cybernoid 1 or 2 will probably know what I'm talking about, as it was by the same author. But I still love this game. I loved playing it when I was young. Strangely enough, I can't remember who I played this with or where I played it. I have a feeling it was around my friend's house in his bedroom, and we didn't play for long. This is another one of those ones that I've come to more with emulation. And I think what's happened with this list is as it's moved along, and as it will move along, the early games were ones I could remember. The games in around about 100 in the 90s were those ones that I remembered but hadn't really played very often, even when I was young. They were there for nostalgia reasons. Then I got to the ones that I played quite a lot when I was young on my original Spectrum, but hadn't really got into with emulation. And as we get higher up this list, certainly the second half of the list that we're now into, or just about into, you'll find I mention emulation and playing games on emulation a lot more. And this was certainly a game I hunted out when I got an emulator and played again. I probably played this more on emulation than I ever did the original Spectrum. But if you want a really highly polished run and gun game that looks absolutely beautiful and has great sound, then this is the game for you. So that's my number 51 game, Exelon. So all that remains is the countdown. At 60 we had Commando, 59 Rambo, 58 Psst, 57 Smuggler, 56 Antiquity Jones, 55 Wave the Exploding Fist, 54 Booty, 53 and a bit Pogo, 53 Frankenstein, 52 Barry McGuigan's Boxing, and 51 Exelon. Thank you for joining me for another section of my Top 100 Spectrum games. Until next time, happy gaming!